Welcome back to the Jewelry for Rhino design tutorial. Today I'm going to explain in detail how to use the Rail Sweep 2 tool with several examples, and teach you how to design this pendant with the Rail Sweep 2. First, let's learn how the tool works. Select the Sweep 2. Select the left rail. How to recognize which curve is the left rail. Open the curve control point. We need to see the direction of the curve number from point 0 to the end point. It's in this direction. So this curve is left. Alright, now open up the rail tool. Select the left rail, then the right rail. Select the profile. Both rail curves must have exactly the same number of control points. If the side of this type of style is made into a gradient thickness, the effect will be more beautiful. Inside the rail tool, there is an option for us to do this. Change scale along rail to yes. Select left, then right. The thickness of the sides will be adapted to the width of the rail curve. This is a very useful option. So if the 0 point of the curve is at the top, what should be the selection order? Now the numbers are arranged from top to bottom. So we should look at it like this. The left rail is this one. So now I'm going to choose the opposite order. This is the left one. So this is the principle of selecting the order of the rails. If you use a circular profile, it also creates a symmetric gradient type. Like this. This position is now open, so we can close it with a single surface cap. And then make uniform. The two openings can be made round. Or we can use the automatic cap option in the rail tool. Change open to gather. This option is also commonly used. Then we can use make uniform for smoothing. There is also a way to make the two openings circular. Change this to 0.1. The opening will automatically be capped with a 0.1 mm thick round cap. Next example. These two rail curves also have width variations. So usually we need to combine with this scale along rail to make the sides of the flower rise and fall. Look at the direction of the control point numbers. The left rail should be the inner one. Generated above. Default is open. Combine this with the scale along rail option to make the flower sides look more natural and three-dimensional. Once we understand the order of the rails, we also need to know how to utilize the profile to make an outward slope. The principle of Sweep 2 is to place the profile on the two rail curves and generate a surface along the rails. Therefore, if the profiles are properly made outward sloping, it will determine the outward slope of the surface. Beginners may be confused about the order of the rails, and therefore generate incorrect results. If you can't figure it out for a while, you can use the Rail Preview tool instead. It's the same as the Rail tool, but with the addition of a real-time preview function. Click on the options to switch to the result you want in real time. This tool is much easier to use than Rail. But once you understand how the Rail tools work, you can switch between them at will. We can also combine various profiles to create different effects. Generated above. Single profile. Later on, you will realize that you can do a lot of design with just the Rail tool. Next example. These curves are rail curves for a bow pendant. Now I'll show you how to generate the bow. Select the right middle. Select the upper curve, then the lower curve. Let me explain what I just did. Putting the profile here would make it better understood. Open the rail tool. The upper curve represents the upper point. The lower curve represents the point below. And the blue box is the profile. I'll do it again. Select the upper rail first, then select the lower rail, and use the single surface cap. If you want to quickly flatten the bottom, you can right-click and use Flatten to Custom Plane to flatten the control points. Now the center knot is done. Then make the ribbon next to it. The center part of the ribbon is concave, and the ends are flat, so we need to use multiple profiles. Look at the direction of the curve. Select Middle Generation, Multi-Profile. Select left, then right. Select the 0 point. Here use the flat profile. At the second point, the profile becomes concave. It's concave until the 7th point. At the 9th point, it's flat again. Now the ribbon is finished. The transition of the surface can be easily made by using multiple profiles. Remember that the profiles must have the same number of control points. Make another ribbon. Open the control point number and observe the direction. This one is the left rail. Change it to gather. Height is 0. Select left, then right. Point 0 is flat. First point is also flat. The third point is concave. Sixth point is also concave. The 7th point is flat again. 8th is also flat. The second ribbon is finished. We can smooth the end with Make Uniform. Note that the points on the other end will also be smoothed. If you don't want it to be smoothed, you can remove the center control point. Remember, use the Gather option to be able to be smoothed. This way the bow is finished. It's very simple once we know how the tool works. Next example. We can often use Sweep 2 to make a ring. However, it is necessary to select the correct position of the profile in rail. Single profile. First select the upper curve. Then select the lower curve. Shank is created. So, why do we need to choose the profile this way? I'll put the profile on the curve and you'll understand. Open the rail tool. The upper curve is equivalent to this point, and the curve below is equivalent to this point. Moreover, it can still be combined with scale along rail to make the top wider and the bottom narrower. This helps us to quickly create the base model. Then we can open up the control points and edit them. The thing about single surface modeling is that it's fast and easy to modify. Next, I'll explain the other types of profiles. We've combined single surface modeling with polysurface modeling. This is a profile made from a polycurve. When you explode it, you get scattered curves. This type of polysurface profile can also be used with the rail tool. Combine them together. It works the same way, but there are a few options you should know about. To create a ring shank, this is the default option. Change the polysurface option to join. Then select the upper and then the lower curve. Since the profiles is polycurve, the model will be created as a polysurface. The characteristic is that the control points cannot be shown, because the rail option was selected for join. We need to explode the shank in order to open the control points and make adjustments. These poly surfaces can be modeled as a single surface, but can also be produced directly on a CNC machine. Look at the second option group. Poly surfaces created with this option are exploded by default and automatically grouped together. When control points are shown, it is possible to modify the shape directly, or you can modify curves. It's very flexible. Moving on to the third option, explode. This option generates surfaces that explode by default and do not group together. You can use these surfaces directly to create patterns, reliefs, and so on. Let's move on to the last option, and then we'll go on to today's design case study. This option converts poly surfaces into single surfaces. Now the model is a poly surface. Once you've modified the rail or profile, it becomes a single surface. Then we can turn on control point modification. This option is rarely used, so I usually turn it off. Let's move on to today's design case. Now I'm going to use this pendant as an example to show you how to use Sweep 2 correctly. To get to the point quickly, I prepared the rail curves in advance. Next, we need to draw the profiles. You can take it right out of the database. But first I'll show you how to create it yourself, because it's also very important to be able to draw the profiles correctly. I'm going to create 2 gradient profiles. Add 2 points in the middle. Delete the bottom 2 points. Gather these 2 points together. Round the bottom a little bit. Make a copy of it. Select the middle control point. Flatten to custom plane. Flatten the top control point to the left. Add a control point between the numbers 9 and 1. Make a bulge. For the profile below, you also need to add a control point between the numbers 9 and 1. Now the profile is ready. The corner of this position is transitioning from left to right. Open the curve control point. The direction of the curve is now from up to down, which is not easy to see. Flip the curve in the opposite direction. Open the rail tool. Center. Multiple profile. Select left, then right. Select point 0. The sharp point is on the right, so select the profile below first. Use the same profile for the first point. Gradually transition to the upper profile at 6th point. At the 9th point, use the upper one as well. Now the transition effect will be created. Let's make another ribbon. Draw a rectangle. If you want the lines of the pendant to be softer, you can separate the control points here. Add 2 control points in the middle. Delete the bottom points. The ribbon should be sloped outward, and the center control point should be bulging, so that the surface of the ribbon reflects beautifully. Open the control point to see the direction. The 0 point is on the top, so I suggest that it be aligned to the bottom. Then the curve inside is the left rail curve. Single profile. Select left, then right. Adjust the profile, make a little closing. All that's left is to adjust the control points of the surface. I need to hide the background image so it doesn't interfere with the view. This position will be used for setting stones, so it needs to be thickened. This is where the stones will be embedded. here, I'm going to have to go lower to give the lines a little more undulation, so that the shape is more three-dimensional. When using the rail tool, I turned gather on, so we can just make uniform. Thin out the joints a bit. Insert a row of control points. In order to save your time, I will use double speed for the adjustment part of the model. Make the other side of the ribbon as well. Revolve 180 degrees. Copy one. Change the color. Adjust the ribbon according to the reference picture. This ribbon will be faster to recreate. Revolve 180 degrees. Adjusting curve control points. Using the rail tool to generate the ribbon. Now it's almost as large as it should be. Modify the profile to minimize the ribbon's slope and thickness. Adjusting the shape of the last ribbon. Make the holes for the chain to go through. Use horizontal mirror curve to draw a horizontal teardrop shape. I need to reduce the outward slant a bit to prevent it from being too thin here and causing breakage. Use JFR Edit Box to modify the size. Height 1.8. Length 3.5. Set as Super Subtractor. Then turn on Boolean Preview. Adjust Boolean results in real time. Finally, optimize the shape. Boolean out the holes that will go through the chain. Now the modeling of the pendant is complete. Thanks for watching this far. If this video was helpful to you, please share this video and subscribe to us. See you next time.